So the New York Jets, with the 11th pick, decided to select a tackle, which makes sense. I mean, they needed to improve that line. They needed to improve the offense around Sam Darnold. They just had to. And so a great way to do that, maybe the best way to do that, is by getting a tackle. And, I mean, listen, there's 4 great tackles in this draft. Plenty of people had any one of those guys as their number 1 guy. Plenty of people had Becton as the number 1 tackle in the draft. He's a tremendous player. I mean, obviously we all know about his size, but I really think that what's really going to help is just the fact that, New York, you could see so many times last year that there was trying to be a play that could develop, and, Gase will occasionally like to run some developing plays, and when you try something like that, and your tackles can't block, and your offensive line can't block, they just can't work, and I think that having a great tackle can not only help prevent those kind of things happening, but now you can try to run the ball through him. I mean, how many times have we seen them just struggle to run the football and have it be no fault of the running back, but because of the offensive line? So I think that this will help them in 2 different ways. It helps them in the passing game, and it'll help them in the rushing game. I think that Sam Darnold is, I said last year, I thought he was in the worst position in the NFL in terms of talent around him. And I do think that adding a big, fast left tackle, that could go a long way towards making him, be in a much better situation and making the Jets a much better team because their defense is good. So I love this pick, and let's just jump into the film study. We'll start things off with this play. That's where Becton is on the field. He's going up to block that Syracuse player, and what you're going to see really right after the ball is snapped, what I want you to take a look at is going to be just how he gets in position. That's what this play is really going to show off, is his positioning, because that's obviously very important. Watch how right when the ball is snapped, he's going to really just focus on getting that right hand right on the left shoulder pad area. That's the key placement that he wants. He wants to get his right hand just really on the left side of that Syracuse player's body, just somewhere, because now at this point, I mean, for Syracuse, for that defender, it's going to be very difficult to try to get closer towards the bottom of the screen than where Becton is right here. And in fact, it's going to be nearly impossible because, look at how Becton is able to just completely overpower him from that point. And that's really kind of what it comes down to, is that he's just one of those guys you're not going to be able to overpower. You're just not. So if he can get the good positioning to begin a play, it's over. He's going to make that block, especially in the running game. Reminds me a bit of Trent Brown in that sense. Not saying he will be Trent Brown, but, he has that potential for sure. That's his upside. When he can get in your way, when he can get that positioning, it's going to be very difficult to overpower him. So you got to try and find ways to get around him. Overpowering him just isn't going to work whatsoever. However, that being said, it's not so easy to get around him either. I know a lot of people will look at, okay, he's 6'7", 368 pounds, which is just absurd that somebody can be that height and weight. Just ridiculous. Also, it was his birthday a couple days ago, so happy birthday to him. Looking that up as I looked up the height and weight. But anyways, the young 22-year-old is definitely someone who he can move around a lot better than you would expect somebody of his height and weight. And, I mean, the height, even the height, because, 6'7" guys in general can't move that much, let alone when you're over 360 pounds. But he can move. Like, look at this play, where that's going to be the matchup. It's one-on-one. Once again, you'll see a lot of one-on-one matchups with Becton because they trust he can do one-on-one matchups, and for a good reason. But what you're going to see the Syracuse defender do right when the ball is snapped is he kind of fakes as though he's going to be going straight into Becton, but then he's going to try to go around. He's going to try to go to Becton's left, get around him that way, try to get to the quarterback. It makes some sense. I mean, listen, this is a guy you're not going to be able to go through. When you can't go through somebody, try to go around them. That's what he's going to try to do here. But watch how Becton just stays with it. He gets that left hand and good hand placement. His hand placement is great. I mean, that's something I love about Becton, and he's easily able to finish off this play. It really is. It's the hand placement that I think is very interesting. Great hand placement, fantastic hand placement. And the fact that he can do that and do that consistently, I think is why he is such a huge prospect and one of the better tackles of this draft. And I also think that his footwork is good. His hands are great, his size is great, but his footwork is also very much there. this play is a good example where what's going to happen is that he's going to start off blocking who you would expect, the edge rusher lined up against him. That's what he did in the last 2 plays. That's what he does on most plays. So, okay, makes sense. This is what he'll probably do on this play, but it's not going to be what he's going to do on this play. He's going to instead move up to block that player after finishing off slowing down the edge rusher, because this is a 3rd and 2. They have to make sure that they pick up a few yards here, and it's going to be a running play, so they don't want to let someone get completely free. But basically, they're going to have one of their backs in the backfield run out to block the edge rusher. He will finish off that block. So Becton just quickly blocks the edge rusher, but then moves up to block someone at the 2nd level. Then you're going to have someone else finish off that block. So this is a high degree of difficulty for Becton. But watch how well he's going to pull this off. He, for the exact right amount of time, blocks the edge rusher and then gets in perfect position to block the defender he's trying to get out of the way. I mean, you couldn't ask for anything better than that. That is just perfectly executed, and at that point, I mean, he's easily able to finish off this block, and they get the first down. The reality is, when you have a tackle like Becton, he can change your entire game plan. I remember part of the reason the Rams, everyone credits the Rams turnaround to Sean McVay, and for good reason. They were abysmal before he got there, but then they, became great right when he did get there, made the playoffs and then the Super Bowl the year after. But I always felt like Andrew Whitworth didn't get enough credit for that turnaround. Him coming to LA was a huge reason, and they were able to run plays through Whitworth. I think that's I think that just shows, what kind of impact a tackle can have on a team. And if Becton can be that Andrew Whitworth tackle, again, I've now compared him to Trent Brown and Andrew Whitworth, two of the, one of the best young tackles in the game and one of the best older tackles in the game, maybe even a Hall of Famer in Whitworth. So probably selling him a bit too high here. I'm not saying he's going to be either of those two guys. I'm just kind of showing that if you can have the impact of those two guys, this could be a fantastic pick. I also wanted to show one more play. I wanted to show a play of him just dominating, because that's another thing he can do. Yes, he is a very talented tackle. Yes, we can talk about all these, little things. His hands are great. Him being able to get his hands in perfect hand placement, almost as if, his hands are magnets and there's other magnets on the part of the body of the player that he's trying to get it to. He has tremendous footwork. Yes, he's a ginormous human, which is obviously the number one thing that's going to get talked about with him. But I do think that one thing that's worth mentioning is just his strength, because, sometimes the weight doesn't exactly coincide with strength. Sometimes there's bigger guys who aren't as strong as guys who are a little bit smaller, but in this situation, without a doubt, Becton is very strong, and let's show an example of it. This one is a good one where you're going to see two players on the left side of the screen. There's a tight end and obviously a tackle. Becton, he's going to go out to block a guy closer to the inside, whereas the tight end obviously blocks the person who he's lined up with. And so right after the ball is snapped, one thing you're going to notice is that the tight end does actually start off blocking the player that Becton is in charge of blocking, which just makes some sense. I mean, you have some time to get to your guy anyways, so might as well block somebody else a little bit. But at this point, he is going to finish off and try to get to that block. But Becton, he's going to say, well, hey, I have a slight advantage right here. I'm not going to win this matchup. I'm going to dominate. And watch this just sheer force right here in the way that he's going to completely bring a Syracuse defender to the ground. I mean, I feel like if I were to ever step foot on a college football field, I would end up like that Syracuse defender against anybody. But, Becton just made a solid Division I athlete look like a fool out there, and it's because he's just so good. He's very strong, and he does, he checks off all the boxes. He really does. There's really not too much negatives you can say about him. I think you could argue that some of the tackles are better. I would argue that. I mean, I don't think he quite has the lateral movement that an Andrew Thomas has. I don't think he's quite the athlete that a Jedrick Willis is. But at the same time, I think that he is just still a tremendous tackle, and I would not be surprised at all if in 10 years he ends up being the best tackle out of this draft. It's a good tackle draft, quite frankly. I mean, there's a lot of good tackles, and honestly, I felt like as long as you got one of the four, the three I just mentioned, and then also Tristan Wirfs, as long as you get one of those four, you're going to probably go home a happy camper. And, it's kind of the expression of it's never a bad move to draft a tackle. It's hard to really get mad at this pick whatsoever. So, Yeah, that's what I think. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know in the comments below. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.